Do any of you guys have lots of printouts of your poo? I always think if anything ever happens to me and people search my house, they're going to find lots of weird things like this around and wonder what sort of human I was. Ugh. Hey gang, hope you're well. So yesterday Twitter alerted me to the fact that it's Ibs Awareness Month this April. So considering the fact that my IBS is the worst it's been in ages, I thought I should probably do a little video update about it, because I used to do videos about it a lot, and just because nothing's changed too drastically I haven't been updating you, but because I'm going through a bit of a bad phase with it, I thought now would be quite a timely time to do it. Anything I talk about in this video, if there's anything you want me to focus on in a future video, whether it's any of the treatments, any of the specific diets I've tried, any of my feelings towards how it affects certain parts of my life, then put it in the comments below and I'm happy to do another video about it focusing on that particular element. You guys know that I'm currently following a vegan diet, and for years in the comments whenever I spoke about IBS, many people would say go vegan and it will fix you, you'll be sorted, that sort of thing. And I was sceptical because I knew from the results I'd got from tests I've had over the years that for me a lot of the things that aggravate my IBS are actually a lot of natural things like fruit, vegetables, herbs, spices, nuts, grains. But I was hoping that, you know, maybe that was wrong, and when I went vegan things would be sorted out. And for a while I felt like, oh, things are fairly, you know, going along like that. Maybe eventually it will improve it. But recently, like I said, it's been the worst it's ever been. So unfortunately, going vegan won't be the fix for me in terms of my IBS. And I think that I'm only saying that not because I don't want people to go vegan, because I'm going to still continue to eat vegan, but because I think, like all illnesses, there's not a one-size-fits-all cure for everyone. You've got to very much pay attention to what makes you reactive, what you've learned about your body while you've had the illness, things that seem to be triggers for it. Your results when you have tests will be different to mine and other people's, and you've got to look at your unique case and what seems to aggravate you and worsen and exacerbate things. And that's why I think you've got to be careful when you give advice to others, because all bodies are very different, obviously, and different lifestyles, all sorts of DNA makeup is different. So just before you think that you're giving people the cure, just take a moment to think, how do I offer that information to them? Because you don't want to get people's hopes up, you don't want to give them false information, you don't want to give them false hope, but it's obviously nice to share and help if you think that you can help someone too. So it's just about finding a balance for that sort of thing, I think. So this is very much about my personal story, the tests I've had, my experiences. Yours might be very different. Disclaimer over. So I'm going to talk about when I first realised I had IBS or was starting to have symptoms. I was always someone that had a very healthy appetite, but I was always very, very slim, which obviously some people found that hard to compute, because they're like, you eat all that but you're looking like that. People used to be a bit unkind and stuff, but yeah, I always just used to go to the loo quite regularly and I didn't think anything of it. But I think when I reached uni and after I had glandular fever, things went up quite a few notches. The toilet's making a noise, ironically. Let me just turn that off. Turn it off? I mean, close the door. So yeah, after I had glandular fever, I don't know whether, you know, the internal floras or things became imbalanced, and just the diarrhea started to become more regular, more frequent. It just started taking over my life, and that's at the same point where my fatigue started kicking in as well, and I got the nickname Miss Narcolepsy because I used to fall asleep in the student union and just have to take naps, and I'd miss out on socialising and things like that. But the problem with getting IBS symptoms when you're at uni is you'll go to the doctor, who obviously sees a lot of students because of the area that they are the local doctor in, and they'll put it down to maybe exam stress, university course stress, being in a new environment, perhaps too much drinking, maybe too many late night trips to the chicken shop or the kebab shop. And if you're a non-confrontational person like I am and a people pleaser, you just be like, oh, you're probably right, doctor, I'll behave a bit better, I'll stop drinking so much, blah, blah. But I'd already cottoned onto the fact that drinking definitely made me worse. I'd often get like rashes or breakouts when I drink, and I know everyone that drinks usually gets alcohol bomb. That's why it's called alcohol bomb. It's a well-known thing. You get the runs the next day usually. But mine was, you know, next level. It was. So I quickly learned myself that I would be removing alcohol and I'd drink a lot less, and it got to a point where I just wasn't drinking at all because I just didn't want to make my situation worse, and I knew that that did make it worse, so I was taking it into my own hands. But after a while things weren't getting better, so I'd go back to the doctor and I just kept getting dismissed. But I knew I had to be persistent because it was affecting my relationship already. I didn't feel I could get romantic because I was worried about things leaking out in unfortunate moments and killing the vibe. When you're feeling bloated, or you're getting that feeling of dropping, like almost like a lift going down in your stomach, where you almost feel like the contents are going down like that, or like there's like the sense of throbbing in the bum hole, like it's irritated or stinging, like something wants to come out. So that's not conducive to you feeling sexy. It doesn't make you feel like you want to be moving too much. So yeah, it was affecting relationships, well, not lots of relationships, just one relationship, and I didn't feel like I wanted to go out as much because I was feeling anxious about being out and not being able to access loos. So it was starting to, you know, affect how I felt about socialising and everything really. So I was persistent, and eventually they put me on various IBS pills, but they're mainly ones that reduce, what's the word they use? Spasms. So it's to reduce any sort of that sort of cramping sensation going on in the stomach, which would hopefully reduce the diarrhea. And to a degree they worked a little bit, but none of them were effective enough to make me feel like, oh, it's good enough to carry on. I still felt like I needed to explore it further because it wasn't a quality of life I was happy with. I think the pills they tried were like Buscopan and Mebeverine. There's another one that I can't remember. So then after uni, I kept going back to the doctors because I was losing a lot of weight. I wasn't able to keep my meals in, and I'm someone that loses weight quite quickly because I'm already quite light. And I was getting, you know, below 7 stone. And as someone that's 5'6", that's quite low. And so I'd go to various doctors, and some were just. There was one actually particular that I remember, I won't name and shame, but he actually basically just said, deal with it. I mean, it could be worse, be grateful it's not something worse. And I was like, I understand that. I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world, but it is affecting my everyday life and I'd like some advice and I'd like some help. But he didn't offer any, obviously. Another doctor decided to explore it a bit further, so asked me to do a food diary. So I kept a food diary for weeks on end, and obviously you think it's going to be quite an easy thing to do, but it's quite hard to keep it up because, you know, you're travelling here, there and everywhere, and you forget, and then you try and remember. But anyway, I was quite good. I kept it for a number of weeks. But the thing with the food diaries is you might get a reaction, so you might write that you had diarrhea this many times after that dinner, but you won't know when you write that whether that is a reaction to the dinner you just had or whether you're having a delayed reaction to something you had yesterday. So it's very important when you're kind of analysing the results and trying to see patterns that you're not just looking at what you had before the diarrhea or the constipation or whatever your particular reaction is. It's about seeing if there's any patterns. Maybe if you've eaten something 2 days before each time you have a reaction, maybe that could be the thing that stimulates your reaction. So it's more in depth than just looking at what you just ate before you had diarrhea or before you had constipation. There are a few things that popped up, and then we decided to do exclusion diets. So that's taking out the things that you believe might have been the things that caused you to react and seeing how you get on for a few weeks on that and seeing if your symptoms are reduced or completely disappear. And the problem with that is sometimes you would be better for a while and you think, oh, we found it. We found the, you know, the incriminating food or the incriminating ingredient. And then suddenly the diarrhea or whatever it is would start again. So then you don't know whether, was it just coincidence that I was okay when I cut that thing out? You think, have I actually gained a new allergy during that period? Perhaps I'm only having it again now because I'm stressed, so maybe it's a stress IBS reaction. So it's still very hard to do it just with this method. So then I was put on another diet, and this one was so restrictive that I began to really hate eating meals. I used to dread them because they were bland, they were tasteless, it were things that I didn't enjoy eating anyway. And you get to the point where you don't look forward to the process of eating. It's just like a means to live rather than an enjoyment, a thing that, you know, you do out of loving food and loving eating. And I think that's dangerous territory to get into. And I can see that if you're someone that's susceptible to body image issues or controlling food, that could be a real problem area. I got to the point that I wasn't worried about body image or losing weight or anything, but I did start to not enjoy eating and not want to do it, which was concerning. But anyway, this diet was so restrictive. At one point I was even told I couldn't eat anything that might have touched plastic, because they thought, what if my issue is plastic? So that's anything that comes in a bottle, anything that's wrapped, anything that has kind of microwavable, you know, the containers, you know what I'm saying? So wrappers, anything like that. And then we worked out, no, that's not the issue. And then you get frustrated because you're like, I've been on this diet for months where I've not enjoyed living at all because I've hated every single meal, and now I'm nearing 6 stone for no good reason. So moved on, blah blah. Eventually, after many trips back and forth, seeing various GPs, they decided, okay, we'll finally take you to see a specialist. And they don't do this on the off because obviously it's expensive for them, and they just want to check if there's anything a bit more cost effective to them they can do to kind of get rid of me, essentially. Eventually we got referred and started to have like proper tests and things like that. So I had some allergy tests. This is my file of results and things. Here's some more. It's quite hard to remember everything I've done. But the first guy that I saw, who I think did some tests on my stools and some blood tests, he couldn't really find out what was going on and just said basically, yeah, it's just severe IBS. Manner was so unsympathetic and harsh and brutal that I remember just crying my eyes out, because you're so frustrated, you're so tired because you're not keeping any food in, and you're so fed up of not being listened to or taken seriously, that I built this up to, finally, someone's going to sort me out. I built this day up to be a big momentous, you know, game changer for me. And for him to so callously just say, you just got to live with it, you just got to deal with it, there's nothing I could do, I just felt absolutely defeated. And you know, with these appointments, you've usually waited weeks, if not months, if not years to get them. So for it to be such an anticlimax was quite gutting. So what else did I do? This is probably all out of order. And I felt like I was not making any headway through traditional medicine. I sought out help via lots of alternative people. I had my hair strands tested by a Chinese herbalist, Dr. Econs, and he has an allergy centre called the Thames Allergy Centre. So first up, he just did the 93 food IG screen report, which is done at the Cambridge Science Park, and the things that came up as borderline stroke positive. What year was this one done? This was in 2010. So this was corn was positive, and so was wheat, cow's milk, sheep's milk, pear, pineapple, cola nut, yeast, so that will explain why beer didn't agree with me, legume bean, so that's the haricot, kidney and pea, egg whites, rice, corn, some citrus, so anything orange, lemon, grapefruit. And weirdly, that at that time, that did seem to fit in with what I'd discovered from the food allergy food diary that I'd kept. So I was inclined to believe that at that time. Anything above 25 would be considered a positive to being allergic or reactive to it. And cow's milk, I got 67.4, so that was quite a high one for me. While I was seeking help through Dr. Econs, I was having some other tests, and like when he felt my body, he could feel there seemed to be some tenderness and like a build-up of fluid in my legs. He took stool samples, various blood samples and things like that. He found a raised level of ethanol in my blood, which through his work has usually meant that there's some sort of candida overgrowth going on. So I went on a diet to reduce things that make candida overgrowth worse, and that will hopefully reduce that. Then I had to go on a pill called fluconazole, which is also meant to reduce the candida overgrowth. Reacted dreadfully to that, came out in the worst blisters, skin reaction ever, so had to come off that. So left that basically untreated, never finished the treatment on that because I ran out of money. Because, let me show you, as in here. So these are all my invoices from seeing the alternative. So here, 70 quid for that hair. Every single appointment was £75. And then if you put in, you know, having tests done, that'd be another £200, £300. Let's see, food intolerance screen for 40 foods was £100. So you can imagine when you're not earning because you're too ill to earn and you're spending this sort of money, money soon runs out. So this one was an investigation for fermentation in the small intestine, the gut fermentation profile. The good things about seeing an alternative physician like Dr. Econs was finally you feel like someone's giving you the time of day, because you're paying for an appointment. They give you a full hour, they give you their attention, they actually look into your specific case. They also show that they're listening to you, which at that point you're just so grateful of. So with Dr. Econs, he then put me on the Stone Age diet, which I have a whole thing about here. And if you'd like to hear more about the Stone Age diet, let me know, I'll do a whole video on that too. And it just lists here the things you can and can't eat, but it is quite tricky and quite restrictive. So as I said, he diagnosed me with having probably a candida overgrowth. When I wanted to explore other medicines to treat that weren't fluconazole, because I didn't want to deal with the reactions I was getting from that medication, I went to my GP and explained that he'd found this to be the case with me, and they dismissed it without question. They're like, candida overgrowth isn't a thing, it doesn't exist. So they wouldn't even give me any sort of route to move forward with that diagnosis whatsoever. And it seems that that's quite a consistent thing, that traditional medicine doesn't acknowledge that. Although a relative of mine said in her local hospital she saw a poster up about candida overgrowth. So maybe some more progressive doctors that read up on the latest research and that sort of stuff, will accept it as a legitimate possibility, but in my area they're still not. So that was kind of a closed door on that avenue, or that sort of solution to my problems. So another route I took was the Ayurvedic route, and I went to Prasanna Karur, who's an Ayurvedic consultant, and she did some sort of test on me, I can't remember now, and she gave me a list of things that I should avoid, the things that I should eat a bit less, and the things that I should eat. So as you can see, might avoid things are frozen fruits, unripe fruits, raw apples, cranberries, figs, raw pears, pomegranate, raisins, prunes, watermelon, frozen veg, cauliflower, celery, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, corn, eggplant, horseradish, mushrooms, raw onions, murdoch root, potatoes, can you believe it? Peppers, legumes and grains, pretty much all of them I should avoid. Sorry, battery died because of course I'm talking for England as usual. So move on a few years and my IBS is still very violent, very volatile, and I'm starting to see blood in the stools more often. And obviously you've got to keep an eye on things like that, and of course you need to go and see a doctor if you start seeing blood. So finally I get booked in to have a colonoscopy and a flexible sigmoidoscopy. So I'm having cameras going down here and up the bottom. I had mine done at the same time. So before this, you have to be on a liquid diet for a few days, and you have to do your own enema at home. So I had to lay out, you know, some plastic sheeting on the floor, and I can't remember. For one of them, I just had to take a kind of liquid laxative, I seem to remember. And another one, I actually had to implement something up the bum, do the enema. I can't remember quite, but if you want me to go into detail about those in a separate video, I'll do that and look through my notes a bit more carefully. When they go in and they do the endoscopy and look in with the camera, obviously they're looking for things like polyps, tumours, any growths, and trying to rule out things like Crohn's, I think colitis as well. I wouldn't say it was painful, just slightly uncomfortable, and obviously, and I chose to do both these completely awake, because I kind of just wanted to be able to see it, because you can see it on the screen what's going on, and you can actually see your insides live, which is kind of interesting to someone like me. Occasionally they will take some biopsies or remove polyps while they're in there. In my case, they noticed there have been kind of some tearing and some internal hemorrhoids, so at another point I had to go in for that, have that done, and basically they just tie them off, so in a few days they fall off. When you have that done, I have to say I really didn't enjoy the sensation, because it feels like just feels like you've got pressure in your bum region for the days while you're waiting for it to do its thing, and it's a little bit uncomfortable, but once that's over, and it's over in a few days, you're very glad that you went through with it. And that's just something I keep an eye on. But still, after that point, obviously still having very violent diarrhea. I'm the Jackson Pollock of the poo world. It's just absolute chaos. I'm still having accidents. I still feel anxious when I go on the tube and everything like that. So I pursued it more. Eventually I got put forward to the gastroenterology department of Guildford Hospital after seeing people at St Peter's, and this is the first time I felt like I made some real progress, and I went to see Dr. Salagian of the Clinical Immunology and Allergy Department. She did some skin tests on me, and after a while things kept coming back kind of quite normal, just borderline, and they didn't kind of point to the reactions I was having. So she, knowing that she had a similar patient to me, she suggested that maybe my intolerance is salicylates, which is something that wouldn't show up on all these allergy tests that I've had over a number of years, and it would explain why I'm still having these reactions despite cutting certain things out and despite having tests coming back that say fine or negative, etc. So I tried the salicylate diet, which is, where's the thing? Low salicylate. So salicylates occur naturally in many foods. Some people are more sensitive to salicylates than others. It can cause rashes, swelling and diarrhea, which is obviously something that I tick for me. So this is a very lengthy document. She marked in the things that I should avoid, the things I could maybe have sparingly, and the stuff I should focus on. And it's stuff that you'd never think could be bad for people. So the things that I should avoid are things like raw sugar, Brazil nuts, macadamia nuts, pistachio nuts, almonds with skin on, honey, basil, bay leaf, chili, nutmeg, vanilla essence, white pepper, cardamom, celery powder, cinnamon, cloves, cumin, masala, what else? Aubergine, broad bean, broccoli, cucumber, tinned okra, parsnips, fresh spinach, sweet potatoes, tinned tomatoes, tomato puree, avocado, like all the things that we're constantly told we should eat because they're good for us, if you're intolerant to salicylates, are actually bad for you. So it goes against everything you've been taught, everything that you feel should be a good thing to do for your health. So it takes a lot of getting your head around it. As soon as I went on the low salicylate diet, I did notice some considerable improvements. And I think for me, she finally found out what my particular issue is. As you guys know from my update at the beginning of this video, I'm not well all the time. I still have very serious bouts of IBS. And that's because with this diet, you don't have to be on it all the time, because it's very strict and very difficult, and it'd be impossible to eat out, frankly. So what you do is every few weeks, when you start to get reactive again, you do a detox that lasts a few weeks, and it just lowers the level of salicylate in your body. So hopefully then you will become less reactive again. So I'm obviously at the phase of my cycle where I need to go back on my detox. But it's just sometimes your detox time doesn't fall in a period of life where it's necessarily easy to do that. So I'm going to wrap it up there because it's going to be a super long video. Like I said, if there's anything you want me to go into more detail on, I will do that. If you suffer from IBS or got any questions or want to contribute your story, put it below. And yeah, good luck to all you other sufferers. I hope you find your causes, your triggers, the things that make it worse for you, and you find a way to improve your quality of life, because it is so debilitating and frustrating and really inconvenient and painful and horrible at times. So good luck to all of you. Sending love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a video soon.